First, I'll be making over the next 10-15 minutes the case that Switzerland is a deep tech nation, and it's absolutely worthwhile investing here in Switzerland. So, deep tech nation. Bit confused here between the two screens. Yeah, so I mean, deep tech is in the Swiss DNA. Which other nation has thrived on complication? Have you seen another nation? Some make it complicated, but they haven't thrived. So the watch industry, I think, is really an epitome of the Swiss mindset, you know, doing something extremely precise, looking for reliability, high quality, and at the same time dealing with complexity. And over the last 250 years, we have scaled that up, also the nerdiness, into our science and university system. We have, with ETH Zurich and EPF Lausanne, two of the world's leading science schools. And leading meaning they're consistently top 20 in most or almost all the rankings in, you know, engineering, physics, computer science. In computer science, they're actually, both schools are in the top 10 worldwide. So really a quality education system that is churning out a lot of good science. Now the question is, you know, when we're talking about investing, is that science really getting to products and ultimately to market? So are we creating startups, enough startups? Well, let's compare with the startup nation. Israel has, you know, almost identical, similar similar population size, also a very, very good university system and science system. And if you look over the last 40 years, how many university spin-offs have come out of the Israeli universities and the leading Swiss universities, it's not too far away. Huh? We're almost equal. Now, the next question then is, of course, is that startup system successful? And still comparing with Israel, which is really, I think, a best practice in terms of startup system. You know, looking at the top 10 exits over the last, whatever, 20 years or so, or less even, I think 10 years, you see Israel has realized around 111 billion in exit value, shareholder value, Switzerland around 50. So clearly less, half of it, or even less than half. However, Switzerland has only invested, to get to these 50 billion exits, only 500 million of venture capital have been necessary. In Israel, you know, 1.5 billion has been invested. So Switzerland has actually the better multiple, has been more efficient, smaller, but a bit more efficient. We also have the entrepreneurs, and again, comparing with Israel, of course, there you have 30, 40 years of startup ecosystem, so you have second-time, third-time founders. In Switzerland, we're just working on that. We have now second-time founders, but even our first-time founders haven't done so badly, if you look at those profiles. I don't think I need to introduce Henri Nestlé, Maurice Hamon. He founded SICBA, which is probably Switzerland's best-kept secret. 85% of the world's banknotes are printed with SICBA's inks. And if you think ink for banknotes is a sunset business, SICBA has realized that as well. So they are developing digital authentication and identification systems and are also world leading there. Logitech, I don't need to introduce further. And Madiha Derouazi, the youngest founder, researcher in APFL and then University of Geneva, developed a cancer vaccine and sold it 3 or 4 years ago to Boehringer for 325 million. What's also special, I think, about the Swiss ecosystem is we have lots of immigrants that become successful in Switzerland. 2 of those 4 are immigrants. And you guess which ones? It's not Madiha, she grew up in Geneva. It's Mr. Henri Nestlé, who arrived as a young man in Switzerland from Frankfurt, called Heinrich Nestlé. And to blend in the ecosystem, he became Henri and added an aigu at the end of his name. Maurice Amand aussi, he as well, he moved to Switzerland from Greece. We also, I mean, we just heard from Six, you know, we have a really large capital market here in Switzerland. And again, if we look at the top 10 listed companies across Europe, or I mean, in the case also Israel, Switzerland is really there up in front, up there with the top markets. And those multinational companies, they are, of course, investing a lot of money in R&D in Switzerland. But at the same time, they're also buyers for startups, exit options for startups. And that is extremely important for essentially recycling the capital in the system. Also, the main tech companies, global tech companies, have discovered Switzerland as research center. Google has its biggest research operation outside the US, here in Switzerland, in Zurich. Meta is here. I mean, I don't need to mention all of them here. So, you know, this looks like perfect. This is really, everything seems to be fine. But one thing is missing, and you'd be really surprised what's missing in Switzerland. It's money, you know, and prices you're paying in hotels, as Marco just mentioned before, you know, you wouldn't guess that money is missing here. But it's venture capital that's missing. If we look at dollar invested in venture capital per dollar spent on research and development in that economy, Switzerland is really far, far back. So it's like 14 cents of venture capital per dollar of R&D money that is spent by public entities, so universities, and by private entities, the Roche and Novartis and so on. And you see other countries like Israel, Singapore, Great Britain, they're far ahead. So there's much more venture capital available to translate the research results into products. Now, you know, in the last years, Switzerland has invested around in average 3, I think 21 was 4 billion in venture capital, and our ambition is really to increase that. And Switzerland is always moderate. You know, let's say for the next 10 years, our ambition is to take that to 50 billion. I'll come to that rate later on. But just looking back the last 50 years, about 20 billion in venture capital has been invested in the Swiss ecosystem, and the exits produced 70 billion of value. So a 3.5x on the total ecosystem, which is really a good return. And here it was what I said, the 50 billion ambition over the next 10 years, so essentially targeting 5 billion of VC investment in the Swiss ecosystem. That will create around 100,000 additional jobs. And Swisscom is a member of and founding member of the Deep Tech Nation Association here in Switzerland, who has as its objective to really trigger that increase in venture capital investment in Switzerland. Then just a few words to ourselves, Swisscom Ventures. So we are actually the leading venture capital investor in Switzerland, a corporate. And we ourselves, we have scaled up. You know, initially, we've invested from Swisscom's balance sheet, and since 2018, we have raised funds. We have LPs, that's mostly Swiss pension funds and family offices, that invest alongside us into the Swiss and international ecosystem. We deploy around 50% of our capital here in Switzerland, and the other 50% US, Israel, and the rest of Europe. So far, we've done over 80 investments, had a number of very good exits, and on that track record, we were able to raise funds from institutional investors. And we're looking to scale that further. However, you know, it's still, I find it almost sad that a quasi-corporate investor is the leading VC in a country like Switzerland. Of course, we have Lakestar here, but they haven't, unfortunately, invested substantially in Switzerland. They have done a number of good investments, even with us. But we need more of those VCs here in Switzerland that are able to scale the ecosystem. Now, another side of Swisscom's commitment to the Swiss startup system is the startup challenge that we're running every year for very early stage, even pre-company foundation, and entrepreneurial efforts. And in 2023, we've run again this startup challenge. We had 200 plus applications. We've reviewed those business plans. And the winner of that competition, I'd like to introduce you to Rick Krieger from Hopper, who will tell you about what he is developing. Hopper is also founded by Rick and another colleague, ETH Computer Science PhD, and he will introduce himself. Thank you very much. I leave the stage to Rick.